What's up, everybody? Cinephile Mike here. I have the pleasure of sitting down today with the writer, director, and producer and star of the new film Unlicensed, Mark Hampton. Mark, how you doing today?
Hello. I'm really good, really good, really good to speak to you, Mike.
So, congrats. This is your first feature film as a writer and a director. Done some shorts, but this is
It,
your first feature. What made Unlicensed, I'm going to jump right in, the right story for you to tell for your debut feature?
uh, I, it was really a question of um, the various pieces over the previous few years that I'd done kind of fitted together perfectly to make this kind of film. So I had done a boxing short film a few years back, which was it was kind of a POC for another feature project. But so I'd had a go at doing something that had a kind of boxing angle and doing a boxing sequence. I'd done another drama where my DOP and I had experimented with doing quite a lot of kind of dynamic oneers and how we could shoot this thing kind of dynamically. So these kind of all came into being like how we would be able to make this film. In terms of the film itself, like I wanted to do something with a kind of boxing angle to it, but I wanted to do something that was different. I wanted to come at it from a really different angle, which is that most boxing movies are about like a working class kid who rises up from the streets and does good. And I just thought, well, what if we took the opposite approach? What if we put a character who's kind of entitled, he's had everything, and then we strip that away from him, and then we see how he behaves in that environment? Like, what would happen then? And I took a lot of my own experiences. I've worked in the city, not as a trader, but I've worked as one of the big accountancy firms, and I've actually been an auditor, like auditing the receipts from those kind of guys and seeing the kind of excess that they live by, and that's their kind of day to day. So I have that city experience. I'm a parent, so I have the whole kind of thing, the thing about what fatherhood does to you and the kind of responsibilities of that. And so knowing that I was going to be directing and acting, I wanted to make a character that was pretty close to me, so that it would be not a huge transition for me to go from behind the camera to in front of the camera, and that worked pretty well. So I think all the elements just kind of came together in terms of how we were going to shoot it, like the experience that myself and Jeremy, my DOP, had got of like how we were going to shoot it, and then like the story elements that I could draw upon from either my own personal experience or the experience of people that I have known, addiction, stuff like that, and how that affects people, and then kind of put it all into a blender, and out came Unlicensed, right? So
And it's a big undertaking, right? Because sometimes people they'll take like one job in a film, maybe two. You decided, at first feature, I'm just gonna dive in and do all four.
I
So
yeah, well,
how
I
did
did.
you how did
It's
you find the balance and manage going like switching from one role when you had to be actor to when you had to be producer to when you had to be writer? How did you
So
manage your
I had
time?
co-producers on board. So Mark Tunstall, one of my actors, he's an exec, and his partner Michelle was a producer on the film. So I had their support. I also had like a great relationship with my DOP in terms of like he was my kind of eyes and kind of quality control, if you like, on set, just not just for framing, but also performance. He was able to kind of give me notes about like even my own performance. Like you might want to look at that and think about going again. That was kind of a quiet little conversations that was so it was built on a huge amount of trust for those guys. Um, I'm quite good at stepping back and forth between the two sides of the lens because I've done it quite a lot with my short films, and I've kind of done it since I was making little home movies as a kid, and that's kind of become a bit of a muscle. But also, I spent a lot of time working in film production as an AD, like as a runner and an assistant director, like a third, a second, first AD. So I really know how to run a set and make a set kind of work, and I know how to make a day, right? You how to schedule a day so that you can achieve it. So I went there with all that kind of that background and experience, knowing that like I would set myself a goal which is hugely ambitious, but one that I knew that I could break down into chunks and deliver on, and we could get the film shot in the amount of time that we had. And that we could do the things that I set out to do. And I just had to kind of carry everyone with me and convince them like this was a good idea to get involved with this thing. And luckily everyone came on board. So
Nice. And you talked, I love this metaphor used like putting everything in a blender and just kind of putting it together. And this is how Unlicensed came about. And I have to say, the nice thing about the film is you really had to balance this idea of, you have character drama with the elements of, like you said, like with crime and, the background that this character came from, redemption. How did you go about blending all of these tones? And were there any themes or moments that, evolved as you were going from page to screen and how this, you know,
So I think that the one of the big threads in the movie is the gambling addiction thread, because that's a thing that the character is suffering from, and I think that tells you a lot. He when you first meet the character, he's still got that kind of city boy cockiness about him, right? He's still got that kind of overconfidence, that kind of almost sort of unearned confidence. He expects to be able to walk back into his life the way that it was. And he has to learn that that's not the case. And we kind of look at him initially and you can think like, how can you be like this? And then later on, what you realize is that actually a lot of it is a front. A lot of it is a facade that he's kind of carrying because he's hiding this thing that he's struggling with. And his journey really is about learning to take the help that is there for him, take the people that care about him and be truthful with them and expose his vulnerability to them. And that's really where his kind of journey starts. So it was very important to me that there was an emotional kind of battle going on that was reflected by the kind of, a boxing movie ends in a big kind of physical finale, but we needed to have the same thing at an emotional level was really, really critical to make the film work as a narrative. Like you needed to believe in him, and you needed to, by the end of the film, despite the things that he's done and the way that you could look at him as a character, you needed to feel enough empathy to be with him and want him to get for it to go okay for him, right? So that was quite a delicate balancing act. We had a test screening of the film where one of the notes was like, maybe you should do a cut without the whole gambling thread, and I was like, interesting, but I just felt like that would just rip the heart out of the film, but at the same time, that was because some of the gambling aspects hadn't quite been foreshadowed enough. So we actually went back and reshot and did some pickups to kind of really feed that into the audience. I thought I'd foreshadowed it, but then I had been too subtle about it. It needed to be more explicit so that when the big moment happens, the scene on the train, you understand why that's happening. Because so once that was there, it was like, okay, this all now fits together. So it's very difficult when you're so close to something. Like I was the writer, director, and the lead actor, and so by the time I got my edit done, I was like, and I was the editor, so like my objectivity was gone, completely gone, right? So I then presented it to a bunch of trusted film directors and friends, and their notes were incredibly useful, incredibly helpful, because they were looking at it with a fresh set of eyes as an audience, as filmmakers, and they were able to go, this works. This, I don't know where this came from. This you don't need. Like, why is this in the movie? And just be not brutal, but like just really honest and be like, this is, and that's exactly what I needed was, to be given that. Because then it was like a little transition between like, okay, that's my idea of what the film is, and now the reality of what the film is here, and now I can move forward and start to craft the film into what it needs to be for the audience. So, yeah, the balance of getting those things right was not just down to me. It was down to the people who I was able to share the film with and get their feedback and get their notes, and they have made the film kind of what it is, and as kind of tight and kind of as good as it is, really.
And it works. And one of the things that I did appreciate in this was the relationships that that your character Danny has with different people. And so I'm wondering, how did you go about bringing this cast of characters together? I noticed some of them are repeaters. Like, this was not the first time you worked with a few of them. So how did you go about building your unlicensed family? That sounds weird to say it, but you understand what I mean by that.
Well, no. So in a very literal sense, just to start with, the kid who plays my son, who plays Danny's kid in the movie, he is my son. So he's my actual kid, and that's so everyone's like, wow, the resemblance is striking. Like, yeah, it should be.
It's my child.
But he did so well. He was so good. But yeah, so that was I wrote the part of the child, and I hadn't initially assumed that he would do it. He's done acting. We've acted in film stuff before. I hadn't initially assumed it would be him. It was going to be maybe a daughter. And then I was like, actually, Arcee would be just perfect. Slightly older than I originally had planned. I was like, no, but this still really, really works. So he came and did the movie. But in terms of the other cast, so myself and Mark Tunstall, for example, we have known each other for decades. Like, we grew up almost together. So we were punch show. So in Cambridge, where I live, the river has these punts, these wooden boats, and you have these chauffeurs with a long pole, and you take people up and down the backs of the colleges, and you show tourists around. And me and Mark did that for a job back in a couple of summers when we were in our like early 20s. So we go back a long, long way, and we've gone off and done various different things together. And we both have come back to the Cambridge area, and we wanted to do some stuff together. So he was in my short film Acceptance as a character, and then we started think about doing something bigger, like a feature, and like having this kind of very natural, bantery kind of relationship that we have, and just bringing that to life on screen. And that came very naturally, you know. So his role as John, the best friend, like that's a very natural relationship that we have, and we can just put that on screen kind of almost as is, and it works beautifully, you know. And he's got so much kind of charm. He's such a funny, naturally kind of funny, cheeky kind of guy. He really brings, you know, so much to that role. It's just, you know, fantastic.
I could see you two doing a buddy comedy in some point in the future.
Right?
That would,
Yeah,
I was like, I want more of these two.
And then the rest of the cast, like, so when COVID hit, I did something I'd wanted to do for a long time, which is go back and go back to drama school. And because I live in Cambridge and all the drama schools are in London, and I wanted to do something, and then it all went online. And so this became a huge opportunity because I was then able to join a drama class with the Identity School of Acting, and I got put into this kind of very sort of senior group of actors, quite experienced actors. And in that group was Sarah Diamond, who plays Chloe, Jack Newhouse, who plays Nikki Miller, and LaShonda Morgan, who plays Simone, the chef. So I had like a lot of these cast members in these really key roles. Mm-hmm. I wrote for these actors because unlike most projects where you cast someone and you get a self-tape or an audition for 5 or 10 minutes and then I got to work with these guys for a year, and I could really see what they could do. And we all developed hugely over the course of this year as performers and actors. And I absolutely knew that they would smash it out of the park. And I was just very lucky that when I presented them with this idea, they were like, yeah, let's do it. And so I got these incredible cast members that I'd been able to kind of handpick from the class that I'd been in, and just knowing that they were knowing they were going to deliver, and B, having parts written for them with their voice, you know. And so I was incredibly lucky to have access to that incredible talent.
And you'd worked with Gary Davidson also before. I think I know.
Yeah. So Gary is a boxing coach. It's his passion. He's comes from a family of kind of boxing, and he was in a short film that I made called Town vs. Gun, playing a boxing coach. But he's got a really natural kind of East End London kind of vibe going on. And for this one, I just wanted to try. Let's put him in the hard man role. Let's see how he does. And he does such a great job. Like he brings like real menace to that character. He really delivers on screen. So Gary's a real asset to the movie as well.
And so that, you know, leans into that authenticity. And I'm wondering, because this is, like you said before, you did the short Town vs. Gun, what is it about boxing as the sport that you like to bring onto the screen?
I love it's just how visceral it is. You know, it's just how kind of visceral and impactful, and, you know, you get to do like a very literal clash between two individuals. You know, you build up a conflict, and that conflict erupts in the most kind of visceral, tactile way. And because of the, you know, with boxing, you have a guy with, you know, shirt off, and it's the vulnerability, like the exposure. They are exposed, and you see that each of the punches land, and you see the wounds and the injuries as they get taken on. And that's really gripping for an audience. And I think if you do that really well, then you can. It's almost like a surefire thing. Like you're going to end on a really great finale if you do a great boxing match. And but of course the trick is you've got to have, like I said earlier, you've got to have built the emotional journey up to that boxing match, to the point where it matters so much that you're really engaged, right? And you're not just delivering a big sequence at the end. You're delivering like an emotional kind of climax to the movie as well as a physical one. So yeah, I just think it's a great thing on screen, and it's a fantastic visceral part way to tell a story, right?
And how'd you go? Because the one thing that I really liked when we got to that fight was I love the way that it was captured on screen. Like you could feel those blows. I think I even talked about it when I wrote the review. You know, you could feel each of those punches land. How did you work with your cinematographer, Jeremy Dawson? Like, how'd you map this out and collaborate and land?
So it was pretty it was pretty improvised. I've got to be honest. Like we had access to this real boxing event. So our big boxing event was 1,000 people in the crowd.
Wow.
We got the opportunity to go in there and shoot with that crowd and shoot our wides in the interval. So we had literally 15 minutes to go in, and we had been choreographing our fight scenes. So we'd go and do a choreographed fight scenes, and we shot the various rounds. And then at the end of that event, everyone went away, and we went in and did all our close-ups from like midnight till 5 a.m. So we shot the entire boxing sequence in one evening. So it was pretty insane. And we did have to go back and do some pickups and a few close-ups and stuff, and just to fill in a few gaps here and there. But we got most of it kind of on the night. And I think the way that Jeremy did the work of capturing it was really about the fact that we had agreed a kind of style and a tone up front. It wasn't really about, we hadn't storyboarded specific shots. It was just like everything has to look a certain way. Everything has to be intimate and close. Like those punches, we want to feel them by being close enough to the action to see it. And then when we pull back, we want to be capturing the motion and just to get the realism of where they are in relation to each other. So we have the geography, but then we want to be in the eyes as much as we can. And, you know, we just had agreed on a sort of set of rules around how we were going to shoot the boxing scene. The other thing about it is the sound design, because the visuals are one thing, but getting the sound design right is absolutely critical. So our sound team spent most of the time was spent on getting those boxing matches to really work. And because when you deliver at a sound level, then you feel the impact, because that is as much as the visuals. The sound has to kind of, you have to feel every rub of the glove, every switch of that kind of rubber, or the ropes rattling as somebody crashes into them, all those tiny little elements being perfectly balanced. And that's what makes those boxing scenes really sing, you know, is the visuals, and then the audio just elevates the whole thing. And that was hugely important to have. Like the sound team under Dale Suttles was just, you know, phenomenal. And Al, who came in and did a kind of pass as a consultant, he'd done a lot of big action movies, including fight stuff. So we had a really experienced team that came in and just really just lifted those whole sequences up. So yeah, it's the visual, but it's much the sound.
Nice. And so I'm going to start to wrap up in a moment, but I have to ask, because I love to ask this question when I have filmmakers here. As an educator, this is what I call the educational moment of the
Okay.
interview. So you've directed several projects, shorts, this film. What would you say, give the advice, right? What would you say is your best practice as a filmmaker that you take with you when you go from project to project? And what would you say has been your greatest learning curve to avoid?
So my best attribute is I'm always incredibly grateful to everyone just for being there, for showing up and helping me make this thing. And this was so true on Unlicensed, because everybody was being paid very little. Everyone got paid something, but not very much. And they were really there on faith that this was going to be a project worth investing their time in and their energy in. So, and because of that, I wanted to make it as collaborative as possible. It was like, I need to make sure that every single person feels like they are part of this. And I said on day one of shooting, I said, like, guys, this is a collaboration between all of us. And I know that because I'm the writer, I'm the director, I'm the producer, I'm the lead actor, like this could be very easily perceived as like an ego vanity project. And I really want you all to feel like, no, this is a project that we all are involved in. We are all contributing to. So whether you are a head of department, whether you're a DOP, or whether you're a runner or whatever it is, or you're an extra, if you've got an idea about something, bring it to me. I want to hear it. I want to hear everyone's ideas about, like, if you've seen us doing something and you think, maybe, what about this? And bring it to me. I will listen. I can't promise I'll use it, because ultimately I'm in charge and it's my final decision, but I would love to hear your thoughts. And that sometimes great ideas come out of that stuff because somebody just mentioned something to you and you're like, oh yeah, that is, you're right. When he's over there, he does do that. So maybe we could do, and it just lets you kind of be creative, and it makes everyone feel like they are part of a team, right? And that's so important. And maintaining the positivity and the energy. Like when you're in charge of something like this, directing, you have to lead from the front, and you have to set the tone that's going to exist on your set. So you have to be, positive, energetic. You have to be upbeat, and you have to have a sense that you know what you're doing. Even if you don't, you have to project the sense that you know what you're doing. And you can go to your team, your HODs, and be like, okay, so what do we think we're going to do here? But when you're talking to like a big room of people, they have to get a sense that you know where we're going today, what we're doing, and that's absolutely critical. Because then they're on board, right? Then they're with you. You carry them with you. My biggest learning. So I went into Unlicensed knowing a lot about the production side, and I've done, like you say, some shorts and stuff, but I've never been through the post production journey on a feature on a project this big. That was my biggest learning curve, like having a few of those things set up in advance. So I knew I was going to edit the thing myself, but I didn't have a colorist lined up. I didn't have sound design really booked in terms of scheduling, composer, all that stuff. I had initially planned to do go to libraries to find music, and then actually, when Andrew Barn came on board, it just transformed the whole thing because having themes written for your characters and the consistency, the coherency of it is just transformative. And then also being able to use the licensed track that my Jamie Scallion was allowing me to use from his time in the band. I directed music videos for that band, and so it's kind of nicely full circle that those songs now appear in my feature film. So that was really cool. But yes, the biggest learning curve for me has definitely been about like planning your post production and your kind of post production workflow. Like as a micro budget, it was really just about for me getting the thing shot and then trying to work it out. And I think going into the next one to be like, right, we know how we're going to get to the end of the process, because it was a really long period for me editing the movie and trying to get it put together. Like, that period when you get to the end of production and the whole team disappears and then it's just you and like terabytes of data, and you've got to then start the hard work of crafting that into some kind of movie. So yeah, get your post sorted out. Make sure you know how it's going to happen. But I did a podcast recently with a friend. We talked about like 10 things not to do in your first feature, and there was this big list of things. And one of them was like, don't do it without a composer, don't do it without your post production, things I've just talked about. But the most important one is like, don't let anything stop you. So if you haven't got these things lined up and these things aren't ready to go, don't let that be an excuse not to start, because you'll never quite be ready. At some point you have to take the plunge and go, well, we're just doing it. Set a date, decide that that's when you're going to do it, because that's the only thing stopping you from doing it is yourself.
Awesome. And finally, the last thing I'm going to ask is, what are you hoping people take away from the film after they've spent this 90 minutes in your world?
I hope that they go away with a renewed sense of the power of people to change, the power of people to redeem themselves, the power of individuals who you may think are a lost cause to turn around and surprise you, and come back and be the person you want them to be. I really hope that it gives people a renewed faith in humanity in that respect. And also, I hope people go away from it thinking, wow, that guy would make a great Bond.
They're casting. Well, Mark, thank you so much.
Denny is listening. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today.
Thank
For
you.
everyone checking this out, you can catch Unlicensed. It is now on all streaming platforms in the UK and Ireland. For my friends here stateside, we don't have information yet, but stay tuned. We will get that to you as soon as we can. Mark, all the best with the continued journey on the film, and take it easy.
Thank you so much, Mike. Good to speak to you, man.